Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true firsthand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. When people ask me about the subject of psychedelics and what they can do to allow for the most profound and quote-unquote successful experiences with them, no subject comes to mind quicker than what they are doing to create harmony in their health as a whole. The challenge that so many individuals face is lacking the guidance necessary to create this harmony in their being, which, as I am sure you can imagine, can lead to many challenges within the psychedelic space as a whole. Today's guest on the show is no stranger to the subjects of health, psychedelics, and mentorship, and is someone who is a master of weaving these subjects together in a way that creates an actionable framework for his clients from which to embark upon. He is a CHEK-trained professional and faculty member, having been a longtime student and teacher of Paul's teachings, is the COO of Primal Fusion, which speaks to the notion of fusing science and spirituality together to create high-quality health and performance for its clients, and is someone who truly practices what he preaches, as will be evident by his journey in psychedelics and the approach he takes to connecting with them that we will speak about within this episode. So without further ado, please help me in welcoming my man, Aleks Rybchinskiy, to the show. Aleks, my man, so great to have you back.
Honored to be back.
Yes, dude. We were just getting into an amazing, we just had an amazing conversation before this even started. Everything from crypto to NFTs to, saving the world to all of these kind of things. And, as fate would have it, we landed on psychedelics, which is the perfect, start for this show, as This One Time on Psychedelics is the name. And so, really where I love to start these, right, is, considering that, we're roughly in the same age group, and I imagine you were around DARE and all these, Just Say No campaigns and everything that was big in the, the 90s and the 2000s. I'm always curious to hear how someone like yourself, who is so into health, right, was able to, break through the oftentimes, big challenges that presented themselves with regards to the idea of health and psychedelics being synonymous, right? And being able to be conjoined into one omniscient unit, if you will. So I'd love if you could give us like the spark notes of kind of like, what first got you into psychedelics? Were you opposed to them at first, or were you immediately like open to them? And kind of how that journey got you to the place you are today.
Individuation got me into them.
Yes.
I was 16 years old. Thinking I know more than my parents, trying to get unconsciously their attention, and by doing all the things that people tell you not to do, getting in trouble with the police and not doing good at school and not listening and all the things that you do as a teenager and or a wounded teenager, I would add. And so, I was at someone's house, and when I was 16 years old, and someone, and they had actually they had a nice layout. They had their whole tree. They had trees in their yard. You can't see neighbors. And this guy was like, "Hey, do you want to do some mushrooms?" And I'm like, "Let's do it." And you kind of have an idea. And so then I remember having a wonderful time staring at a picture of a lion for like 4 hours and laying outside. And then I remember going outside, laying down on the ground after the whole night and like blinking and opening my eyes, and then it was already daytime. Like I passed out on the floor. Wow. And then I didn't do them for maybe 10 years. I didn't do them. And then one day they somehow wandered back into my life through through Paul CHEK and doing all those things. And, I started smoking cannabis again. After about 17, I stopped smoking cannabis for like 8 years. And I was like, I've had enough. I'm done with this. I'm done with all the things. I'm going to work out. I'm going to focus on my business. I'm going to exercise and train. And I really fell in love with my body and seeing what it can do and things like that. So, and then years later, hearing Paul talk about it and then going like, okay, what is this thing? And then starting to experiment with my mind, because none of my whole life, if someone tells me not to do something, if I feel it should be done, I'll do it, not out of rebellion. So if someone says don't do that, and I in my mind walked my way through the 10,000 scenarios of what could happen, and if 90% of them are good, I'm gonna do it, whether someone tells me I shouldn't or not. Because I go, this isn't because of a lack of thought. This isn't because of lack of feeling. And so, you go into it on a beach, or I'd go in, I'd find, like, for example, one of my stories is I was in Florida for a training course, not CHEKs. And I was sitting, I was like, it was a 2-week course, and I was sitting in a parking lot at Whole Foods, and I'm sitting there going, why am I sitting here and I sat there for like half an hour, and every now and then I would go back in and I go, why am I sitting here? And I go, I don't know. This is when I was already starting to listen to my soul, and I'm once again sitting there, and all of a sudden I get this freeing feeling. I go, okay, I'm going to go in Whole Foods now. I get out in Whole Foods and I bump into this girl, and then we exchange smiles, and then we bump into each other in the mushroom, in front of the mushrooms, and she goes, oh, you like mushrooms? And I go, yeah, I do, all sorts of kinds. And she goes, and she stops and goes, what kinds? And I go, all the good kinds. And then she goes, do you need any good kinds? And I go, I would love some good kinds. And then we exchanged numbers, and then a night later I was on the beach in Florida having an experience. And so it wasn't until I think I met Sarah that I was actually starting to participate into that space consciously. Most of it was being able to manage myself and have insights, because I'm constantly having insights, whether on medicine or without medicine. They're usually expanded and also focused when I'm on. It all depends. It depends what I'm doing, where I'm doing it, and things like that. But then I've learned throughout time, like, okay, going into a public place, I've had some terrifying experiences that were not really terrifying, but I say terrifying because I imagine if you put someone else in my shoes seeing this, they might freak out. But when you've, died several times, you've kind of already know what other expanse of consciousness and realms and possibilities and dimensions and densities. And so that only kind of knocks the door open a lot quicker than normal. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at, where it's hard for someone to talk me into something that I don't want to do. And it's been one of the things that when I'm called to something, I say yes. Like, there are some medicines that I haven't tried because I'm not called to them. I like most people, when you tell them like, oh yeah, I've done ayahuasca once, they're like, well, you haven't done it 70 times in the rainforest?
Yeah.
No. I've done it once, and I am perfectly patient waiting when the next right time, because the first time I did it, it was not the right time. And I pretty much held space for the whole thing. And even after 4 cups, I was still lucid and able to manage other people in that space. And it didn't feel like it was for me there. I felt like I flew in from, Austin to California to hold space for, 20 people. And because the facilitators weren't holding it down. So yeah, that's how I function. Something's asking me to go towards that, and every time I turn my head away, spirit grabs me by the face and makes me look at it again. I go, okay, what are we looking at? And then I'll go and investigate it a lot.
Yeah. I love that because, something you and I connected on yesterday is, how many people are, falling into the popularity of psychedelics. And this is the challenge when something is demonized for so long and then all of a sudden becomes like the cure-all for everything. I mean, let's face it, we know what psychedelics are capable of doing, right? And, the research studies coming out are pretty much stating what a lot of us already knew. And, right, there's a yes and at the same time, this does still not mean they're for everybody, right? This still doesn't mean that you need psychedelics to have an incredible life or to have a metaphysical or like a spiritual experience. But it can be a route, right? And I love what you were talking about with regards to, waiting for the call, because, I really think that the pattern of addiction can be seen in anything, right? From exercise to, to hard drugs to psychedelics, right? And I know many people as well that, again, not a judgment and maybe it works for them, but I'm like, that's a lot of ayahuasca you've done in a very short amount of time. Like, are you sure your soul was calling for that? Or was that more of like you thinking that you were damaged goods or that, you needed these things? But at the end of the day, what I feel a lot of people are missing is the integration, right? Because, you have the PEAK experience, right? The peak, whoa, I did ayahuasca, right? But that's just a doorway, right? It doesn't allow you to actually, it's up to you to still walk through the doorway and actually do the work to integrate that experience into your daily life. And without that, you're not going to really be able to, you're just going to need more and more medicine. And at the end of the day, these substances, these medicines, while they can help, they can also jar you, right? Like you were talking about doing in public places. I feel very similar to you. Like it's not going to ruin my experience, but it will jar me, right? Like I'm going to be feeling a lot of energy and, at best, it's just going to prevent me from really diving as deep as I want to go, right? Doesn't mean that I will never do it in a public place, but it means that if my intention is to really use them as a medicine and go in and like do some, under the knife surgery of my mindset, my heart set, my soul set, everything like that, then I'm not going to do them in a public place. But I feel as though there's this lucrativeness, and also at the same time, there's this kind of like secretiveness to psychedelics that make people be like, I want to be part of the in crowd, right? And it's like, listen, like these medicines, while they can be amazing, they can definitely do a lot of damage as well. And, that's not to, scare people out of doing them. It's just like, hey, most people only talk about the good sides of psychedelics, right? Like, everything was love and light, and I turned into an infinite star seed, and I went and saw my Akashic record, right? But like, they didn't tell you about the part where they were shitting and puking and all of that, right? And so a lot of people go into it like, I'm going to drink ayahuasca and go to whatever the Akashic record is, and then they're like, why am I shitting everything out of my body? So it's important to have that conversation, right? Because there are some challenges to psychedelics too. And that doesn't mean that those challenges, in most cases, at least for me, haven't led to the biggest breakthroughs, but they're worth talking about in the conversation of psychedelics. Hey, everybody. I hope you're enjoying the show. I wanted to take a quick moment to let you all know that the doors are officially open for the Conscious Cannabis Collective. And as such, this is the last week you can sign up and receive all of the bonuses we're currently including. This is the last time I will be personally onboarding those of you who sign up with a complimentary one-on-one session, and you'll have the ability to get the Grow with Cannabis course for free during this limited time. For more info on how you can take advantage of this offer, head down to the show notes for this episode and secure your spot today, as we only have so many spots left and they are filling up quickly. Now back to the show.
I feel like it's almost it's boutiquey, and I know a lot of people like boutiquey and they like novel, and it's almost getting to that point of so many people being different that there's a culture of people that are exactly the fucking same, all thinking they're different, but they're all the same. It's like a bunch of goth kids being, oh, I'm so like different than you. And you're like, you're in a sea of goth kids. You look all the same.
Yeah.
You've individuated and you've created a bubble of the same thinking. And exactly what you were saying before, people have this idea that they'll reach enlightenment. They'll be, God before it's time for them to be God. And it makes them somehow more spiritual, like a badge on a Boy Scout. They're like, hey, I got my spiritual badge. But the reality of the situation is, after you crap yourself and throw into a bucket in the forest, and you have a good story about being eaten alive by mosquitoes in the rainforest and how arduous it was. But if you go home and you're still the same, negligent father, or the distant husband, or the overworker, or you may feel better because that's what happens. It resets your brain. It helps your brain function better. But if there's no habit to moving forward with whatever this sacred medicine is whispering into your ear, and I got the chills talking about it right now, is you're going to be the living embodiment of your shadow. So if you think that you go into medicine wanting to be a more more connected, but if you don't go home and practice connection, you're going to be the most disconnected human being on the planet. Yes. Especially in relationships. If that was your intention, and let's say you did speak with God. And if you don't listen to God, there's no hope for you. There's not enough ayahuasca to really change what's happening there. And then what's going to happen is you're going to bottom out and it's going to ruin your life. But guess what? That's good, because Rumi even says things don't fall apart, they fall into place.
Yes.
And so even that's good. But the idea, even wrapping your idea around like bad and good is all judgments, because to some person, finding the depths of their soul is a good thing, no matter how painful. And to some people, it's so scary and jarring that they'll never want to go back there again. So getting people excited for these psychedelic journeys and bringing them into a space that they get shattered in without any tools. Like, we have tools. We've talked to Paul. We have so many people out there that we can share these ideas that are on the same wavelength. But then like people are like, oh man, why aren't our parents like this? Do you think our parents had tools, or their parents had these tools? Do they have like even in Alan Watts as an example? Like, do you think they had a cassette tape that like rolled through their into their hands that were like, let me go and binge all of Alan Watts or all of Ram Dass for a while and then get it? No, they're having fun. And yes, in the 70s in 60s, 70s, they had this whole thing that, that happened. And but once again, our culture isn't doing that necessarily. It's this spiritual, almost narcissism now. It's like, I am more spiritual than you, which is very not spiritual to even have
yes.
that. So
it's a paradox.
Yeah. It's like an oxymoron.
Yes.
You're having these ultra spiritual, like even clothes that are made out of synthetic fibers.
Yes.
And you're going and you're spending all this money that you're like, I don't like materialism, but now you're spending all this money over here doing all this nonsense surrounding materialism, and then not realizing that the people that are providing you this have you by the balls because they know what you want, and marketing is really good.
Yes.
And they know what you scroll through on Instagram and Facebook, and you're thinking, I'm manifesting this, but no, their fucking algorithms are brilliant.
Yes.
And you say the word faux fur and it shows up on your phone in like a couple of days. And I'm going to let you know if it showed up on my phone.
Yeah.
Like if I say, I really want some
yes.
faux fur, some animal, some spirit hoods. Let's see if they show up on my phone. I'll let you know behind the scenes.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. I hope you are all enjoying the show. I wanted to stop by and fill you in on our brand new, completely free to join Facebook community called the Highly Optimized Ceremony Circle. Now, I imagine many of you are aware of the newest creation within Highly Optimized, which is the Connect with Cannabis 10-week coaching certification program. Aleks and I have been having so much fun empowering coaches with the skill set of coaching with cannabis and helping them up-level their coaching practice that we wanted to create a place where anyone could join to ask questions, receive free information on how to work with cannabis in the way we teach in the program, and be able to gain clarity around how to get the best results with their clients in order to become financially independent in their coaching practice. To join, hop over to the link in our Instagram bio and send us a request. It is our intention to assist as many coaches, facilitators, and healers as possible in the important work they are doing in the world. And if you are looking to join a community of like-minded individuals just like you, who are passionate about helping their clients achieve the highest quality of life possible, the Highly Optimized Ceremony Circle is for you. I am looking forward to speaking with all of you in the group, and as always, enjoy the show. It's such an important topic to bring up, right? Because, when we look at like the psychedelic revolution of the 60s and 70s, most of those people, I'm not going to say all because binary language is toxic, right? But, a lot of those people, let's say that language or use that language, a lot of those people ended up being the people that then crack down on psychedelics later on, right? So what did we see? They didn't actually change. They were just having the PEAK experiences without actually doing the integration that allowed them to have the PEEK experience, right? And the way I distinguish that is the PEAK is, like I said before, like the actual experience, and the PEEK is when you're actually able to slip behind the veil while in a sober state of reality, right? Because, if you look at a kid, like this is one of the things that I've whenever you hang out with like a young child, right? And I'm sure you'll know this, it seems very similar to someone coming out of a DMT experience, but very slowly, right? Over the course of years, right? Like you look in their eyes sometimes and you're like, you are blasted right now, right? And so it's like, what I get at is like, if you're not actually doing the integration work to have that PEEK and enter the mind of a child once again, right, where things are open, you're open-minded, you can agree to disagree with people, and you realize that the confines of what make up you or what make up Aleks or Ryan as an identity are not objective, right? Like you're able to see like, oh, someone else has a different reality, and so long as they're not hurting me, I'm glad that reality works for them, right? Doesn't mean we won't talk about our individual views, and maybe we agree with and change our views based on one person's perspective. But at the end of the day, if we're not allowing ourselves to have the integration work that leads to those types of experiences, then what the hell are we really doing, right? Like at the end of the day, yes, we might have fun, right? But at the end of the day, we can also traumatize ourselves, right? Because, coming from someone who, did mushrooms before I knew what the hell they were, there were a couple experiences where, luckily, because of, the training I did in psychology with going to school, I had some ability to understand what was going on. But I really it would have just been a traumatizing experience otherwise, because I had no way to actually comprehend what the hell I was talking to, that it was my soul or any of these things. I mean, we're talking, way over 10 years ago when I was starting to experiment with these things. And, it's very interesting because, that's what I see a lot, especially like we were talking about music festivals before we hit record, right? Or actually, no, we had hit record by that point. But, we were talking about music festivals and, talk about one of the grounds that I see people making some very interesting life decisions on, right? Like, and this is where you see a lot of people like, quote unquote, freaking out. I mean, what is it? They got a lot more than they bargained for. Now, there is the way to look at it, like they got exactly what they should have gotten, right? Because everything's perfect and everything happens in divine timing. And like you were saying with Rumi's quote, things don't break down, they break into the place they're supposed to be, or they fall into the place they're supposed to be. But at the same time, like, that can take a lot of, counseling and coaching and everything to get yourself out of. And so, I think that along with doing the integration work, doing the prep work, right? Like essentially preloading and postloading. The preloading is like, okay, I want to learn about what these are. I want to talk to some people who have done them, right? I want to take some training from someone like Paul CHEK who can help me understand and be able to comprehend what I might experience on these. And then you have the PEA experience. And then the post is having the integration work, right? Maybe you're working with a coach. Maybe you're just journaling and meditating and, giving yourself some space to understand what this experience now means for you in your life. But if you don't have that pre and post load, things can get really weird really quickly.
While you were talking, I had this perfect analogy in my mind. It's perfect.
Yeah.
For psychedelics. Everyone always walks around saying, hey, I have my shit, you have your shit. We all hold our shit in. Psychedelics is like, if you're not ready to let your shit go, it's like sneezing when you're trying to hold in diarrhea. If you're clutching on to dear life, to all your shit, and you take a psychedelic and you're not ready to let go, you are absolutely going to shit all over yourself. And that's what's supposed to happen.
And literally and figuratively.
Yeah, through your eyes, through your every pore in your body, through your soul, it's going to clean itself out. And then it's up to you to not hold your shit in again.
Yes.
So that's kind of the idea. I saw this guy walking around holding it in, and he's denying it to other people that he had to go. But when you see a kid that has to poop, you're like, you have to poop.
Yeah.
And then he all of a sudden at the wrong time sneezes, and then, oh God, it's embarrassing. And, even more trauma. They're in public, they're not in the right space and all those things. Yeah. So, and then they got to integrate after that. Like, what do I do with this now? What do I do now that I've, like in this metaphor, embarrassed myself to myself in front of other people? And they may not care, but I'm once again building up more stories and shit that people care. People are going to think this, people are going to do that. And I think you nailed, like you said it. But I want to put more emphasis on how important integration is. It's more important than actually taking the medicine.
It's the whole thing, really. Like, you're sitting with a medicine for what, 6 to 10 to 12 to maybe 24 hours if you're sitting with something like a boga. Then you have a lifetime to do integration. So I agree.
Yeah, there was a time there. I mean, we spoke briefly on it that I was called to do it, and I asked my soul over and over again. And a lot of people called me, crazy for it. And I almost shattered myself. But I also trust that my soul wouldn't have me do something that outrageous that I couldn't recover from. But it took me a while. It took me a while to really get myself back together. And if it wasn't for the training that I've had and the support system that I have around me, I don't know what would happen. I'd be an absolute mess if no one reflected back to me like, hey, I think your shadows are coming out again. I'm like, whoops. And then having to consciously, like even magic, how we're doing PEAK versus PEEK. Most people don't know magic is supposed to end with a K, but they wiped that K away because magic is that true alchemization, that true the transmutation of transmutation.
Yeah.
Transmutation of energy. And people know the turning lead into gold, but most people don't look at it from a metaphorical standpoint, and they're focused on lead and gold metals into other metals, precious metals. Well, if you add the K, when you don't add a K, it's illusion. Most magicians are actually not magicians. They're called illusionists for a reason. They've rebranded. And so magic is spelled with a K, MAGICK. And that is real magic. So when you have anger, and inside there's a transmutation that occurs that creates empathy or love or deeper connection, regardless of what internal turmoil you're going through, that's magic with a K. And people are doing it all the time. They choose to do it, or they live in the shadow. And so every day, and we spoke about it in the other podcast, every day is, and every moment is a chance to transmute and make the world a little bit better. And even every moment better. And which carries on to their moments and moments upon moments and moments that go on until you die, and then you leave a legacy behind. So that's integration, is being able to carry that in between breaths, in breaths, and how do you show up every single moment, not day, not week, not month, year, moment, and that alone, if that scares you, then medicine should scare you. But if you're ready to change in the moment by moment, when someone comes up to you and says something that triggers you, to not respond with violence, but to take it in, transmute it, and either whatever mode you communicate back, whether it be through questions, whether it be through further clarifications, however people choose to participate in life. If you're ready to do that, medicine may be for you.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought up alchemy, right? Because, you can see, like, I love the subject of alchemy. Like, it's such a fascinating subject for me. And you can see that, like, when you look at a lot of like the older, like, texts coming from Asia, right? They talked about alchemy is exactly like you're talking about it, right? The philosopher's stone is not an actual stone that you go get and then you gain immortality. It's something that you gain from inside by, quote unquote, waking up, by being able to transmute emotions, by being able to be an alchemist, right? But as we moved on in history and human beings went from more of a right brain dominant like state to a more of a left brain dominant state, people then externalize their power once again, right? There's nothing I can do for me. I have to go look for this philosopher's stone. And then I actually want to take real lead and turn it into gold. When you said it perfectly, it's a metaphor, right? Like, you're taking something heavy, a dense emotion, like if you follow David Hawkins' scale, something like shame or guilt, and you're turning it into something lighter, right? Something more around the 500 or 600 on a scale, like love or trust or, enlightenment, whatever that term even really means. But like, you're taking something heavy and turning it into something light. And we all have that ability. And, I think that, at least speaking for myself, like it's, what medicines have shown me and taught me is not really anything I didn't already know, but yet I had forgotten, right? Because again, children, like, they get this kind of stuff, right? They might not have like the mastery of it, but they're doing it all the time, right? And they're just not really an active participant in it yet because they've yet to develop the ego and these kind of things. But once you become aware of this type of stuff, right? And like you were saying, like, then you start to go like, okay, consciously now I'm aware of what these medicines can do, what their potential is, and I'm going to hold them in reverence, right? And go into these these ceremonies intentionally. Then you have an opportunity to have a really amazing experience, and not because it's going to be like perfect or all happy and love and light, but because you're able to see whatever happens as exactly what was meant to happen. And that is like, I would say, to add on to what you said, like, one of the key things, if you can see life happening for you, and even when challenges come up, you're quick to be able to go, like, okay, give yourself 2 minutes to scream and then be like, okay, actually, this is actually good because now this opens up this. If you're starting to really get the reins of that, medicines might be something that could benefit you, right? I say might because nothing is ever objective, right? It's all subjective. We're all subjective experiences of the same objective all. But at the end of the day, when we're able to see things that way, we are actually becoming God in human form, right? Because we are being a conscious creator of our reality. And that's when medicines, I think, can be the topping on the cake that really allows you to break through and turn your breakdowns into breakthroughs.
Yeah, there's two things that popped in my mind while you were talking. Most people have never experienced true surrender. And it doesn't mean, and we are conditioned to not surrender. Like, don't never surrender, Braveheart, all that stuff. But to surrender to yourself, to your psyche, to your behaviors, to your patterns, to your complexes, as you talks about complexes, unconscious behaviors that are wired into us. That a good example, whether you're on a complex, is if you go, shit, why did I do that again? That's a complex, and it's happening unconsciously. And forgiveness. Most people have never surrendered to something that they need to surrender to. And most people have never experienced forgiveness. They've said the words, they've said the illusion, but their psyche, their minds, their hearts, their feelings may have never experienced forgiveness. And that's something that the medicine and being around 4 women all the time has really taught me. So I'm stubborn. I'm hard-headed, and I'm gonna pierce.
Same.
Yeah, I'm gonna pierce through something if I'm like really wanting to pierce through it. And that's why I was telling you that story about almost shattered myself, is I took almost a whole year. I took a year off of that specific medicine, but I took a year off of almost all medicines. I've probably done it maybe a handful of times. And, I'll have a discussion. I'm like, we're having fun. I cannot handle any more lessons. I am still integrating from a year ago. Like, give me a moment, and and the medicine respects that. That's why you see a bunch of people taking mushrooms and Molly and going to a music festival, having a great time. But I wonder how many people have ever taken MDMA and sat with their partner and said what was true.
Oh,
and
dude.
If you have the balls
Yes.
to do that, then it's way better than any music festival, way better than any concert, any experience with friends, bar, whatever it is you've ever had. If you want to feel connection and the ultimate amount of fear at the same time, because that is the biggest mode of vulnerability, is telling someone what you actually want, what you actually desire. And like how alcohol fills you with spirits, which is why they call it spirit. Are you familiar with the etymology behind alcohol?
Yes.
What is it?
Fascinating.
A ghoul.
Yes.
You're inviting ghouls and spirits into your system.
Yes.
With whatever, like they call it liquid courage. Oh, you want courage? You're putting intention into that medicine and it's going to give you courage. But really, you're actually disassociating from your body, creating space for entities and spirits to possess you that also wanted to live out courage.
Yes.
And if you think I'm crazy, that's fine. I've had it. I'm not talking to you. I'm not crazy, but I'm talking about listeners, things like that. Anyone that listens to this. But once you hear it, it's a seed. Then you'll start seeing it. That's a step, is becoming aware of even hearing it, that could be a possibility. But man, sitting with someone and being, not speaking in a soft tone with your hands together, being super spiritual, but really telling someone who you are and having the trust or surrender to having the other person choose you. It's the most whole experience in terms of you feel everything. You feel the fear of them potentially leaving you. You feel the love that you're actually sharing with someone for the first time. You're putting yourself in the hands of another human being to go, this is who I am. Do you still love me?
Yes.
Yeah. And willing for this to end and hoping it doesn't. It's at the end of the day, it's I will tell you this, it'll get you in front of the people that are meant to be there, for one.
Yes. Because there's no more hidden things, right? Like once Pandora's box is opened, it's very hard to close it, right? And so, I'm really glad you brought up MDMA because, this is actually the medicine that...
Can I say something real quick before?
Oh yeah, please go.
And I don't want you to forget what you're saying, but also, if that person leaves, the biggest gift that they gave to you is held space to realize what you want to know about yourself. So that way you can put that energy out and be brave enough to call in. Because you called in someone that accepted you for your illusion. But if you can call in someone that accepts you for who you really are, you're going to find them. They're going to happen.
Absolutely.
I've seen it happen so many times with clients where we do a relationship prayer, or I do their core values. And almost every time, sometimes it happened the day after they write that. Sometimes it happens 3 to 6 months after. But once people really let go and surrender to what they think they want and actually tell people what they really want to themselves, that vibration, attracts what they really want. And, or you're going to be attracting illusions that are going to shatter you until you find out what you really want. So might as well get it over with quick. That's the way mine is. I'm like, let's get over it. Let's move on. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to add that piece.
No, that's beautiful, man. And, I think this is like, what came through for me there is, people talk about manifestation, right? But I don't think people actually understand how to manifest because they're coming from malware, essentially, right? They're thinking they know what they want because their brain has told them what's societal, conditioning or conditioned by society that is good to have and bad to have. So they're still working off duality and they're trying to manifest, and the universe is just like, sit down, little child. You don't have no idea what you want yet, right? Or they're like, okay, if that's what you want, right? And then they're like, why am I still getting all of these undesirable results in my life? It's like, well, because you haven't done the legwork to actually figure out who you are and what you actually want past what your parents are telling you, what your friend circles are telling you. Really everything conditions, right? Like everything is a condition. And so until you become aware of that, and it's essentially like you're in a clothing store, right? And someone is just throwing clothes at you and saying, wear this, right? Versus that same scenario and you going, yeah, all right, this, maybe that, I don't like, I'm putting that back, right? That's like kind of how I see the analogy of being conscious of conditioning versus unconscious to the idea of conditioning. You're not going to get away from it, right? It's part of the human condition. But at the same time, you can become conscious of it. And when you become conscious, you can pick up the things you like and leave the things you don't want.
It's like, it's like being, it's like telling yourself you dress yourself the way you want to be seen in the world, but yet you're following fashion. You're dressing yourself based on how someone else told you is popular to dress. You're like, what?
Yes.
That's why it's not a popular thing, but I dress the way I want to dress. And people don't like it. Some people, now I don't ever hear about it because I don't have an insecurity around it. And now sometimes I may I might be going to do a talk at a country club and Sarah's like, please don't wear that. And I'm like, fine. Because I know the illusion that other people are under, and I know to get through, sometimes it's being the fool. It's being that drunken master.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's blending in and that shapeshifter. So I'm fully aware of that. But most times you won't catch me with a shirt on around the house. You won't, unless it's cold. And then I'll be like, sure, I'm going to put a shirt on. But in the summer, I'm pretty sure I'm shirtless like 99% of the time.
Same.
And the people that are like, oh, why are you wearing a shirt? I'm like, you're lucky I'm wearing pants. Like, leave it at that. And then, but yeah, you're going to see it a lot. It takes bravery and work. Exactly what you're saying. It takes bravery. It takes a lot of work to be able to go, yeah, I don't want to wear that. I remember man buns were in when I started to grow my hair. People are like, oh, it's so in. I'm like, no, even when it's not in style, I'm going to have this thing. So until I want to cut it.
Yes.
Not until someone else tells me it's fashionably cool. So sorry.
Dude.
And that's freedom.
Yes. What's up, ladies and gents? I wanted to take a second while I had your ear to share with all of you a very important announcement. Now, anyone who's been listening to the show for some time now knows that I am passionate about coaching and helping other coaches up-level their coaching practice. What I have noticed in working with hundreds of coaches is that coaches of all different types are facing challenges with being able to get their clients strong and consistent results, understand where to put their energy to allow their practices to thrive, stand out in the vast sea of coaches, move from imposter syndrome into trusting themselves, and ultimately make the money necessary to be financially independent in their coaching practice. The root of these issues comes down to a lack of connection with your creative force as a coach and entrepreneur. Now, this is why we at Highly Optimized have created the Connect with Cannabis 10-week coaching certification program. The reason that cannabis is the focus of our program is because cannabis acts as an imagination medicine. And in order to break free of these challenges, you must first be able to imagine yourself as the coach that is successful and has been able to break free of these challenges. When you are able to truly imagine and connect with the most powerful version of yourself, you can find the clarity to build your business, your authentic voice to speak directly to your clients, and the faith that you can overcome everything standing in your way. Once you have experienced and learned how to achieve these results for yourself, you will be able to offer this same unique skill set in your coaching practice to support your clients in overcoming their limiting beliefs and allow them to experience the breakthrough results that will make you stand out as a world-class coach. In this program, you will learn the science behind cannabis, how to experience the healing powers of cannabis, and how to facilitate these healing powers with your clients. With personalized one-on-one support on how to apply these frameworks into your business and weekly group calls within a community of coaches just like you will be equipped with a unique skill set that will allow you to get consistent, powerful results with your clients, feel confident in your coaching abilities, and allow you to gain financial independence while having the opportunity to wake up each day excited to share your important work with the world. For anyone listening who is hearing the call to set yourself apart and develop a unique set of coaching skills not found anywhere else in the world, jump over to the link on our Instagram bio and book a complimentary call with me today. Together, we will go over your current challenges in your business, your goals for your business, and decide together whether you qualify for a seat in the program. The next class begins February 9th, and spots are filling up quickly to be a part of the budding movement that is cannabis coaching. So book your call today and position yourself as a leading voice of how to work with this sacred plant medicine in your practice. Thank you all for your continued support, and as always, enjoy the show. You know, I originally grew my hair out. We're long-haired brothers, you know, so I can share this with you because, you know, I love sharing these stories of how we started growing our hair out. I'd love to hear yours too. But, you know, I started growing my hair out. I was in high school and I was 15 and it was about January. And in June, I was going to a Slayer concert. And so with Children of Bodom and Lamb of God and Mastodon, like all of these ridiculously heavy bands. And so I remember I was in automotive, right? And I was a freshman and the other kids and they were seniors. And I was getting called Rachel. I was like getting, you know, ridiculed, right? But at the same time, I was just like, well, this is me. And, you know, I'm a guitar player. And, you know, of course, I was fitting into that type of condition, right? Of like, oh, guitar players have long hair. I was a huge Dimebag Darrell fan, still am. And so, of course, I was into that. But at the same time, I never let it faze me, right? And you know, then it became the in thing where like then guys started growing out the hair probably about, I don't know, I'd say it's about 7 years ago, right? Or maybe it's not the in thing and I'm just in a bubble of like, you know, spirituality now where it is the in thing. I don't really know, right? But regardless, I started seeing it show up more. Maybe I manifested it. Who really knows? But, you know, it's so important to be able to stand on your own ground, right? And yes, like there are times where, like you said, like I will shapeshift, right? Like, you know, I knew I loved you for a lot of reasons, Aleks, but knowing that, you know, you're also a no shirt, no pants type guy, like, dude, in the summer, especially like it's humid as hell. Like you're in Austin, so you know this. Like first of all, vitamin D, right? There's some logical reasons, right, why I don't wear a shirt. But at the end of the day, like I feel like clothes are prison, right? Like it's like, why do I want to restrict my range of motion unless I absolutely have to? Like, yes, if I'm going to give a talk, if I'm going to meet a client, like, yeah, I'll look the part, right? But at the end of the day, you know, in a backwards way, and this is kind of like, again, you know, what psychedelics kind of showed me was that, hey, Ryan, there's 7.5 billion people on this planet. if you fake it, right, and you shapeshift, right, and you go around a group of people who then gets this idea of who you are from who you shapeshifted into being, then is that doing them or you a service, right? Versus if you show up in a tank top and shorts, right, and someone's like, this guy's not serious, good, go find someone who wears a khakis, right? Like that's not me. So it's a fine line that I go back and forth between. And one of the main reasons I started my business was because the company I was working for, they started getting way too involved in things like dress code. And this is what happens when corporations take over, companies. And, we were at a cannabis company, right? And I'm wearing like cannabis shirts and they're like, could you wear like, more khakis? I'm like, no, that's not me. Like, am I making you guys money? Cool. Then why do you care? You know what I mean? Like, why does it matter? And so, but at the same time, seeing life is happening for me, I was able to be like, oh, they're pushing me out to start my own thing. What a gift, right? And so it's interesting how we can rope all these subjects together of like, social or societal conditioning mixed with like seeing it as happening for you, seeing it as like, I'm going to be me and whoever comes into my wavelength is actually meant to be there. Because like you were saying with the MDMA example, the integration, right? To bring it all home, the integration for that type of MDMA experience, right? Where you be vulnerable with someone and they either accept you or they don't, is then walking around without a shirt on after and being like, this is who I am. And if someone's not going to love me for that, then, hey, you know what? Like, go find someone else that you love. And I wish you the best. Right. So it's actually in a perfect way. We talked about the integration through societal conditioning of that experience you talked about with MDMA. Wow. The divine willed it into action.
Do you want to hear why I cut my hair like 4 years ago?
Dude, please, let's go for it.
It has to do with psychedelics.
Yeah.
So I started growing my hair truthfully because all of the stuff I say is truthfully, but I don't know. It's a condition. It's like, pay attention right now. And so I started growing my hair because I liked the way it looked and I was getting lazy and cutting it. And I was trying to grow my business and I'm going, man, these $100 haircuts are like, man, I did the math, one haircut a month, that's $1,200 a year. I'm like, I could save that. So if I don't grow my hair, I save like $4 or $5 grand, which means I could do other things with that money. Because I was starting off, building my business, all these things, playing football still. And then I started getting this, people kept going, why are you cutting your hair? Don't cut your hair, hippie, cut your hair, and then eventually I created a good enough excuse to not cut my hair. I go, I'm going to donate my hair to cancer, kids with cancer. And then I started using that as a tool to get people off my back. But really, I liked it. So then fast forward to, I think Ari's like 1.5 and we're going to the park and Sarah's like gone for the day. And I was like, I doused and I was like, maybe I should take a little bit of my little microdose on mushrooms. And it wasn't a microdose for most people, but I'm like, I'll take a little bit of microdose. And I used my pendulum and I asked my soul and when, how much should I take? And so it gave me, the amount that I should take. And I took some. And I was walking with Ari to the park and we're doing our thing and having a great time. And all of a sudden I hear this voice, when are you going to cut your hair? And I'm like, where did that come from? And I'm like, I'm not going to cut my hair. And all of a sudden the voice goes, what about the kids with cancer that you promised? And I go, but I like my hair. And then I heard the voice say, then you should probably tell people it's because you like your hair. And I got chills again. And I'll never forget that. And I was like, okay, I'll cut my hair. And the voice. So it took me like 2 or 3 months before I was like, I don't want to cut my hair off. And then so I went to a salon and they cut it off and I sent it to kids with, and I actually looked up because I told people about this and enough people have told me back while I'm deflecting from my own insecurity of having long hair. And they're like, oh, don't go through these companies. They charge the kids. And so I found a company that didn't charge the kids for the wigs and they gave it to them for free and through fundraising making the wigs. So I'm like, I like that company. I sent it to my hair. And the moment I started growing my hair out and they're like, when are you going to cut your hair? I go, I'm not, I like it. And from that moment on, no one's ever told me to cut my hair. And I'm like, you have a funny way of doing things, universe, but
yes,
I get it.
Lesson received.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I started living life like that. Once again, integration. I started going, am I insecure about this? Should I say something? Because I know people are going to pick up on it because people are not stupid, even if they maybe parade as being stupid in real life, or the parade as being our Kardashian lover or reality show binger. Inherently, people's souls are people's souls, and they can see through your bullshit, whether they can consciously see through it. And every now and then I'll be around someone that, I mean, I'm like, why am I here, soul? And they say something unconsciously that I'm like, whoa, I don't think you realized what you said, but I got it. And and even if I try to repeat it back to you, it may be too much, but I go, thank you for that. That was amazing. And I needed that coming from you. And so, yeah, it was those moments that shape who you are moving forward, that teach you something so simple yet profound. And then you can reflect on it and go, that stopped happening. Well, that problem stopped happening. And it all happened since I made that choice that I integrated through conscious action and surrendered to feeling, like unaccepted or not loved, if not this or that. And you know what, I'm doing it because I want to, and I enjoy what I'm doing. And then, the universe stopped sending me people to give me shit about it. It's what our parents do. They poke at us until, most people don't realize that our parents poke at us, not to steer us off course, but to make sure that we know what we're doing. And so, are you sure you should start a business? Yes, I'm sure. Are you sure you should do this? Yeah. Are you sure you should marry her? What they're doing is testing whether you're fucking sure or not.
Yeah.
So if you're not sure, of course you're going to be triggered by them not being sure, because they're in the mirror. And in the mirror, you're not sure. So inside, you're not sure. But if you're like, yes, this is the person I'm going to be with. Yes, this is the business that I'm going to start. And then this is the path that I'm going. Yeah, I'm going to eat organic food. If you're the first person that's obese in your, the person that's obese in your family, full family of obesity and heart disease, and you go, I'm going to stop eating gluten and dairy. And then I'm confident with that. And then they watch you change because of your own. And then they start changing. Once again, I have this also in my personal life. This has happened where I would, 10 years ago, if you told me that my parents would be doing Tai Chi with me in the backyard in Thai fisherman pants, I would have laughed in your face. They're like, they're not going to get out of their tracksuits. Like, are you serious right now? And, but yeah, they go out and do Tai Chi with me. They participate and eat. They only shop at, local now for the most part. And they still eat. They've stopped smoking after 30 years. And I stopped telling them what to do. I stopped parenting them. And then they did it all by themselves. I released them from that image.
Yes. Yeah, because actions speak louder than words, right? It wasn't, I think this is where a lot of people, and again, I'll speak for myself. This is where I got it, confused for a long time is when I started getting into health, we use that as an example and we could, trail us off into psychedelics or music or whatever else, right? I would start telling, especially my mom, my dad, like, because I felt so good. I was like, hey, and I would see them and I could see that they were like challenged with their health. I'd be like, you should do this. You should do that. And they'd be like, fuck you. I don't want to do any of that. Right. Versus when I just started showing up as a different person and started being so happy and started having all of these amazing things happen in life, then they got curious and they were like, hey, what's that thing you're doing again? Right. Like, where are you getting food? What is that? Like, what is that thing about grass-fed beef? Like, what are these things? And so then the invitation was made. And I think so many people, they get this confused that really like to lead by example, you first have to lead, right? So you have to be a trendsetter, as I call it, right? I like to translate that from trendsetter to transcender, right? You have to give it a full send. And so like for me, once you give it a full send and you decide to be yourself, you're going to start creating a certain vibrational energy and a certain vibrational frequency. And then people are going to pick up on that and they can get triggered by it, but they also, in a certain sense, can make the invitation of like, okay, Aleks, what's that thing you're doing? And then from there, they're open to receiving it, right? But, we all know consent is sexy, right? And this is one of the things I see with psychedelics right now, with spirituality, is that people are trying to push their reality onto other people because they think they know what's best for them. And at the end of the day, I choose to believe we're infinite beings, right? So when I see someone going through, smoking and, with degenerative diseases, and I could see that, or at least through my perception that, a lot of their lifestyle choices are leading to these results, there's two ways to think about it. Either one, they're damaged goods and this is not what they should be getting in life, right? And that could be from a great intention of like, I want them to heal, I love this person, etc. But at the end of the day, their mission in this life could be really experiencing pain so they understand how to not do that in the next lifetime or the next 10 lifetimes or etc. So you never know what is really in someone's karma that you might be trying to interfere with unconsciously by telling them what to do. So that instead, if you just be who you want to be, the right people will start asking you, who are ready on their developmental journey as a soul, to pick up on those things and start creating higher quality of life. But they have to want it first, right? It's the same thing they talk about with addiction or any of these things. The person has to want it first, right? You could have a best friend who's doing heroin and you could, strap them to a room and tell them, you're not going to do heroin anymore, but they're going to find a way out if they're not ready to stop doing heroin. And so, I think it's so important that, one of the things psychedelics showed me was that, right? Was like, hey, look how you're being received, right? By people around you. I was able to like actually feel how I was being received by my mother, by my father when he was still alive. And it was like, wow, you're almost like a bad parent for them, right? Like you're just telling them like, you don't know good for you. I know better for you. And this is what you're going to do, right? When really that's not them. And that's not unconditional love. That's conditional love at best, right? That's saying, I'll love you if, right? And really at the end of the day, love is not a condition. Love is the all. And so the best way to practice love is accept people for exactly who they are and love them for who they are. And if they're ready, they'll come to you, right? And that's why I think it's so important to be who you really are. Because if you are like, trying to be something you're not, then you're going to bring people into your wavelength that ultimately you can't help and they can't help you. You're doing a disservice to both. And I think this is one of the biggest reasons that, psychedelics have an opportunity to like jar people into realizing these things. But at the end of the day, what separates a jarring event that turns positive from traumatizing is how conscious they are and how ready they are. And if they go into it unconsciously without talking to their soul first and seeing like, is this really right for me? Or am I just being influenced by, a certain person that I respect that says, hey, this worked amazing for me. And so it's really like, I really feel the name of the game of life is simply awareness, right? And that's why like, our daily practices, right? Like from the food I eat, I always have, I don't know. Oh, it's right here. I eat all my food on top of this charging plate, like I put intention in everything I do only because that's what I choose to do, right? I chose to do it myself because I saw the power that was coming through with it. But to the degree that we do things out of like imitating other people is the degree to which we are living someone else's life. And so I think it's so important to find that balance between like, yes, you want to help people because you have good intentions, but at the same time, realizing that you're not really helping them by telling them what they should do, because that's taking power away from them, right?
100%. Yeah. I was one of those people that were like, yeah, let's do it. This sounds like a great time. And then, yeah, that sounds like a great time. And then, but my brain is always like still sober, insightful most of the time. And so my brain is constantly working and to your point about stop parenting people and holding them down and making them drink your version of consciousness is I have had more impact. And I only know this because people have shared this with me when I've literally said nothing. And then the quote, a wise man once said nothing. If you're doing the right things that are aligned with you, and by you saying nothing, people are attracted to that. And it couldn't be more true. And it's almost, and I can see where a lot of these gurus go silent, because almost like without saying words, it inspires people, something in them. They hear the voice because they have to get quiet and listen without hearing sound.
Yes.
And so if someone's on the edge, first of all, if someone's on the edge of thinking about it or not, they're probably, look at the signs around you. If it keeps showing up everywhere, you might want to, plan it out or whatnot. But, as I'm sitting here, I'm thinking like, man, I hope this podcast doesn't ruin any people's expectations of, oh, we're going to be learning about psychedelics and all we're talking about is the integration work, which is also their conception of, or their conceptualization of what psychedelics are. But here we are talking about the after result, because you didn't get here in one journey. It's I reflect on how people live out through their lives And it feels like I've lived already many lifetimes in my
Same.
lifetime through all the things. Yeah. All the things that, I've gone through. And like, if someone was to replay my life as to where it is now, they'd be like, holy shit, you know? And
Yikes.
yeah. And it's because I let that feeling guide me. It led me to Paul. It led me to Sarah. It led me to my business. It led me to what I want to do for a living, and or while I'm living, and it's my choice. How I choose to serve people, because ultimately that's really the caveat here. It's how do you serve
Yes.
people, and I lost my train of thought.
Well, dude, one thing, we're just rocking the fucking cyberspace right now. It couldn't handle it. But, one of the things that came through for me was a quote that I love that I heard, and like immediately it was like, it just hit me right. And I like got some really good cosmic giggles out, which is silence is the language of God. Everything else is a poor translation. And I was like, I'll take nail in the head for 500, please. Like, and this is coming from someone who like, if you can't tell already, Aleks, I'm quite the chatty Cathy. I love like I'm a very yang person, right? Like, I imagine you are too. Like, it's just, I love being a goofball. And at the same time, I've really learned the value of silence. And it's actually in, starting my business, because I went from a job where I was working with patients, sometimes seeing 100 people a day. I mean, like loud music. I mean, the whole thing, right? Going to clubs and concerts every weekend, and just distractions, right? And I'm not saying distractions are bad or good, but they were distractions, right? And so at the end of the day, in starting my business, and then, the pandemic, what a gift happening where I got such a great year of silence. I really started to realize like, oh, soft talk acknowledged, I think I might be missing out on the gold that is silence, right? The gift that is silence. And as I've tuned into that more, I've really been able to understand that now I have an off switch, right? Like before I only had an on switch. And I think this is what, psychedelics taught me in a big way too, because even before I came into that realization kind of on my own, because I had like the pain point, I was alone, I couldn't really do anything. So I had to find something to do. My best experiences on, say, mushrooms were on those large teas where, I would think that it was going to be just like a giggle fest, and then I would get like really jarred, right? Like one time I had an experience where the mushrooms basically, started fucking with me and checked me, right? Because I was going into it in a very egocentric type way. I was like, I'm just going to do a ridiculously large dose and watch TV with my friends, and this should be fun, right? And they basically were like, hey, you're choking. You ate the wrong mold. You're dying, right? And I was like, what? And like, I tried to be like, I'm fine. And then every time I would say I'm fine, there would a voice be like, no, you're not. No, you're not. Right. So I went through this like crazy death process of having to surrender. And once I surrendered, they were like, all right, now go lay in your bed and see some geometrical patterns or whatever you want to do. Right. And it was in that first experience right there with a big dose that, I was able to like really experience what silence is. I mean, it's actually everything. It's where everything meets nothing. And so I remember staring at my ceiling. And this is, again, coming from someone who is usually triple tasking at one time. Right. And I'm staring at my ceiling, and I'm just the most content I've ever been. And I remember thinking to myself, now this is relaxation. Like I had a whole new awareness of what relaxation was. And so, the things that they can teach us, but then I had to integrate that, right? Like we were talking about before, like I had to actually do the work to be like, okay, when I came out of that, I still wanted to triple task everything and have the distractions, but I knew there was another possibility, and I knew I enjoyed that possibility way more than I was enjoying the distractions. And then I had to figure out, well, why am I distracting myself? Oh, I have a lot of trauma around my father passing and other family members passing. Oh, yikes. That's not fun and exciting, but I want to look at it because that's what's going to ultimately lead me to be able to stare at my ceiling and be perfectly content no matter where I am. So it's interesting how these things work, but if you choose to see it happening for you, the gifts, they just keep on coming. That's what I found.
Silence is one of the most deafening things you'll ever experience.
Yes.
Silence is so loud. I remember walking with Ari when we're living here, and the crickets were like, it sounded like an orchestra, and it was so overwhelming. And I go, Ari, do you hear those crickets? And she goes, no. I go, you don't hear those crickets? She goes, no. I go, we stopped, sat the dogs down, and I go, listen. She's like, what does it sound like? It sounds like I'm going to the cricket sounds, and she goes, oh, her eyes light up. She goes, I hear him. And then every like 5 minutes I go, do you still hear the crickets? She goes, yes, they're so loud. I go, isn't it silly or isn't it crazy that we didn't hear him before? And then she's like, yeah, I can't believe I couldn't hear that. But it's because her awareness is on whatever is in her mind, like learning words and formations and fun
Yeah.
things that, whatever. But it was a moment to stop and go, do you hear how loud it actually is out here? And there's so many moments like that that I will never forget, especially with silence. Silence is one of my favorite things, and people don't get it. And they're like, how do you be silent? Because it's not fucking silent. It's so loud.
Yeah.
It's so loud. You hear all of God's whispers. You hear all of, how do you know what that animal wants?
Mhm.
And Sarah tells people that, like I can communicate with animals and trees, and I hear them verbally every now and then. And people are like, how do you know? I'm like, silence. They don't, because the ego will yell. The soul of things will whisper. And if you can quiet the yell enough, you can hear nature's whispers. You can hear
Yeah.
God's whispers. And those are where all of the things that you need to pay attention to are. Like, what do we even do when we're driving? Simple. I don't know where I'm going. And you turn the radio down.
Yes.
So you can hear the silence of your mind and pay attention. And it's repeated over and over again in our lives. We need silence. And then most people are afraid of it, which when you talked about the pandemic, and I saw most of society collapse. It almost seems like into alcohol, into depression, into domestic violence. And you see it all over the news, and alcohol sales are up 300 something percent. And the only thing I'm thinking about is, man, if they were friends with silence.
It's amazing, dude. One of the things I've noticed too is it's not that one is better than the other. Like, so as I see it, it's just like you want to be able to have the full spectrum of colors, right, in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're only having noise, right, it's not that noise is bad, it's not that silence is bad, but you want to be able to have both and choose consciously which one you're interacting with. And I think that's like really what we've been talking about this whole time, is that nothing is bad or good. It's just, do you have the possibility to experience a lot in life or only a small fraction of things, right? And what psychedelics can do when used responsibly is open you up to those things. And I think that's, really like the ultimate gift they can provide, but they can also do a lot, like we talked about before, if we don't do the legwork, the pre and post loading, if you will. And man, this has been an absolute blast getting the riff with you, man. We're going to have to do a round 2 on here. I got a call with Connect with Cannabis coming up where I'd riff for another hour, but dude, I want to make sure that I give people an opportunity to know where to find you, where they can work with you, anything and everything pertinent to that topic. Make sure you drop it, dude. I want people to know where to find you.
Right on. You can find us on primalfusionhealth.com, where you can look out for Sarah and I and reach out to us for coaching. And we have our online community where we answer all of people's questions every week. We log on for 2 hours, so you get 8 hours of our time. For the price of 2 hours with us, you get 8 hours of our time every single month, and some get a bonus because there's 5 weeks in a month sometimes.
Hell yeah.
And so you go to members.primalpride.com, and it's our online coaching platform where we have all of our courses, and all that's already published, and we're going to be launching it soon publicly. There's already almost 100 people in there that have been around for almost a year now, and we started it only in March. And if you're a fan of the volcano, if you always hear the bag swishing around and what do people put in their bags, we had enough interest that we started making our own blends. And then after sharing those blends with friends, they asked us to make a business out of it. So now we have primalfusionherbs.com, where we share our herbs for people and their volcanoes and their vaping. And so those are and you can find us at Instagram at health.performance.engineer and primal_fusion, and reach out. We're friendly.
Hell yeah. And, if someone listening was just swayed by you to experience psychedelic medicines for the first time, what would Aleks Rybchinskiy suggest for them to have the smoothest experience possible?
Don't have any expectations.
Yes. That is wise advice.
If you have an expectation, you are bound to have a painful experience. If you go in it thinking I'm going to have the best time ever, and you're going to go out, and it could teach you a lesson on expectations, which is a very, very painful one, which I also, if you're brave enough, I recommend you go into, because that's maybe round 2. I'll tell you about my sacrifice unintentional intention going into a journey. And wow, I taught sacrifice. I'll talk about that one next time. But have an intention and have no expectation.
Hell
and
yeah.
Allow the medicine to do what you took it to do.
Yes. I love that, man. And guys, as many of you are aware, I am a huge fan of anyone who is in the CHEK circle, let alone someone such as Aleks, who has been trained in pulse systems for as long as he has been practicing them. In my experience, the CHEK approach to health, psychedelics, and life as a whole is one that oozes balance, understanding of the mechanisms behind what psychedelics are, and the importance of harm reduction when discerning whether or not these medicines are right for someone in their life. This system and the way Aleks has taken it and made it his own has allowed so many of his clients to understand how to learn and discern for themselves, rather than being told what to learn and what to discern in their lives, as most educational establishments are famous for in today's world. And for anyone who felt the call to dive in deeper to the incredible work Aleks does in empowering his clients with this understanding and more, do yourself a big favor and take the leap to begin living into the highest version of yourself today. Aleks, thank you so much once again for doing the important work you do, for being a guide for countless individuals on their path of evolution, and for sharing your wisdom and time with us today. And until next time, my brother, may your journey be smooth and full of light. Aho.
Aho.